The first time Noah came to the house, it was raining, that soft, indecisive kind of rain that can't make up its mind. The gutters were already overflowing when I opened the door, and there he was, half-soaked, holding a broken umbrella like a question he didn't know how to ask. "Sorry, Elena," he said, pushing his wet hair back. "Your husband said you might have the old drill set?" Mine gave out halfway through. He was supposed to be helping fix something at his new apartment. Just a favor. A quick visit. Nothing strange about it, except the way he hesitated before stepping inside, eyes flicking toward the living room where the framed wedding photo still hung, the one I hadn't taken down yet. The house smelled like paint and quiet. I've been repainting the kitchen that week, trying to make it brighter, as if new walls could cover old noise. My husband was away again. Work, always work. That word had become the ghost that walked around our marriage long after he stopped coming home early. Noah stood there in his damp shirt, polite but restless, the way young men are when they don't know where to place their hands. He must have been 26, maybe 27. I remembered him from a few years back, one of my husband's co-workers' nephews, always tagging along to barbecues and backyard get-togethers. Back then, he'd hardly talked. Now, his silence felt heavier. I told him to come in, to wait while I looked for the drill. He mumbled a thank you and slipped off his shoes, leaving small puddles on the tile. The house felt too quiet. Even the clock sounded louder than usual. "You can sit, I said, half smiling. "Thanks. I don't want to get your couch wet." That small politeness made me pause. It's strange, the things that catch you off guard. The gentleness, the care. It had been a while since anyone noticed what might stain or stay. I found the drill in the garage, tucked behind boxes labeled Christmas lights and old memories. When I came back, he was standing near the window, staring out at the rain like it was saying something only he could hear. "Here it is," I said. He turned, smiled a little too long. "You always keep things so organized." I almost laughed. That's one word for it. There was something in the air, not romantic, not yet. Just a silence that didn't belong to strangers. He took the drill, thanked me again, then hesitated at the door. "If it's okay, maybe I could help with the painting sometime? I'm off most weekends." I should have said no. I think we both knew that. Instead, I said, "We'll see." The rain had stopped by then, but he didn't leave right away. He just stood there, looking at the wedding photo on the wall, then back at me. "Tell him I said hi," he murmured. "I will," I lied. He stepped out into the fading light, leaving a single wet footprint on the floor, one I didn't clean for days. For 2 days, the house felt different. It wasn't anything you could point to, just the way lights seemed to fall softer across the hallway, or how I'd find myself looking at that single dried footprint near the door. I told myself it was just strange timing, that quiet after someone leaves and you realize how long you've been living inside silence. My husband texted once that week, flight delayed. "Be home Sunday." No question mark, no how are you. Just logistics. That was our language now. I went back to painting the kitchen, more out of restlessness than purpose. The soft green-eyed pick started to dry unevenly, and I didn't care enough to fix it. The window was cracked open, letting in the smell of wet soil and something faintly metallic. Maybe rain on the gutters, maybe just time catching up. By Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang again. I didn't check the peephole. Somehow, I already knew. Noah stood there, this time with a grocery bag and a shy smile. "I brought coffee. Thought you might need a break from the painting." I should have said I was busy. I should have said my husband was coming home soon. Instead, I said, "You remember the brand I like?" He nodded, a little embarrassed. "You mentioned it once." That detail stayed in the air between us longer than it should have. He helped me move the ladder, open paint cans, tape the corners. The work gave us something to hide behind. We talked about ordinary things, jobs, traffic, music, but there were pauses that didn't feel ordinary at all. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at the half-finished wall, eyes unfocused, as if he was listening for something I couldn't hear. "So, you and your husband, you've been married long?" he asked, not looking at me. 17 years, I said. "We met young. Stayed out of habit, I guess." He nodded, lips pressed tight. Habit can be heavy. For a moment, I almost asked what he meant, but I didn't. Maybe I didn't want to know. Later, when the sun dipped and the room went amber, he climbed the ladder to reach the top edge of the cabinet. The sleeve of his shirt brushed against mine, barely, but enough to make me forget what I was holding. The paintbrush slipped from my hand, landing with a quiet thud. He looked down, startled, and then, that pause again. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Just tired." But he didn't move right away. His hand hovered near mine, not touching, not retreating either. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, faint, but close enough to promise rain again. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. "If you ever need help again, even if it's not painting." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words, but because I wasn't sure which ones would be true. The rain came back that night, harder this time, steady, unrelenting. It filled the spaces between things, between sentences, between heartbeats, between what I said and what I meant to. Noah hadn't stayed long after helping me clean up the kitchen. He left before dark, promising to finish the last wall next weekend. I said okay, though something in me already knew I shouldn't. That night, I stood by the window, watching water trace crooked paths down the glass. My phone buzzed, a missed call from my husband. I didn't call back right away. I just listened to the voicemail. "Hey, got stuck in Denver. Might stay a few extra days. Don't wait up." His tone was casual, like we were old co-workers sharing a schedule, not a marriage. I listened twice, then deleted it. The next morning, Noah texted, "Sorry about the mess. Did the paint dry okay?" I typed yes, then deleted it, then wrote "looks fine." I almost added a smiley face, but stopped. That tiny hesitation said more than I wanted it to. By midweek, my sister came over for coffee. She was one of those people who noticed everything, too quickly, too clearly. "You've been quiet lately," she said, studying me over her mug. "Something wrong?" I shrugged. "Just tired." Her eyes drifted toward the half-painted wall. "You finally finished it. Looks lighter in here." "Try for that," I said. But she wasn't convinced. "You sure that's all?" I almost told her. About the visits, the conversations that lingered too long, the way the air changed when he was near. But how do you explain something that hasn't actually happened, that only exists in pauses and almosts? Instead, I said, "I'm fine." Later that week, while sorting old boxes in a garage, I found a photo. Noah at one of our old backyard barbecues. He was standing off to the side, half smiling, holding a drink. My husband's hand rested on his shoulder, mid-conversation. They looked like friends then, uncomplicated and easy. I stared at that picture too long, feeling something twist under my ribs. That evening, my phone buzzed again, this time from Noah. "Can I swing by tomorrow?" I found the right roller size for that top corner. I hesitated. The easy answer was no, but my fingers typed sure. Afternoon's fine. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The silence it left behind was louder than the storm. Noah came by the next afternoon, just as the light started to fade. That hour when the sun stretches low and everything feels heavier than it should. I tried to busy myself all morning, wiping the counters, refolding towels that didn't need folding, pretending not to check the clock. When I opened the door, he was holding a paint roller and 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, lifting one. "Always," I smiled, stepping aside. The smell of paint had thinned, replaced by the faint sweetness of rain still clinging to the air. The house felt smaller somehow, or maybe we were just quieter. We worked for a while in near silence. The only sound was the soft roll of paint and the hum of the refrigerator. Every so often, he'd glance at me, not long enough to be bold, but long enough to notice. "Your husband still out of town?" he asked, careful, casual. "Yeah," I said, keeping my eyes on the wall. "He's busy." He nodded slowly, as if he already knew. "You must get tired of being alone here." That word, alone, hung in the air too long. "I got used to it," I said, setting the roller down. "You'd be surprised what people can get used to." He leaned against the counter, watching me. That doesn't mean they should. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Not like a question, not even like an opinion. More like something he'd been thinking for a while. I turned toward the sink, pretending to rinse the brushes. My hands trembled just slightly under the water. "You know," he said after a pause, "he talks about you sometimes." I froze. "My husband?" "Yeah, back when we worked together. Said you were the patient one, the calm one, that he didn't deserve that." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Funny, I said softly. He stopped saying things like that a long time ago. Noah stepped closer, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could hear his breathing shift. The air between us felt like static, like something waiting for a spark that both of us knew shouldn't happen. He spoke quietly. Maybe he just forgot how to see you. That sentence did something I wasn't ready for. I set the brush down too quickly, and a streak of pale green paint landed across my wrist. We both looked at it. Neither of us moved. Then the sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut through everything. My heart dropped. Tires on gravel. A car door shutting. Noah looked toward the window, then back at me, eyes wide, unreadable. I didn't have to look. I already knew whose car it was. The car door slammed, and for a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The sound felt unreal, like it had traveled through the wrong timeline and landed here by mistake. Noah blinked first. He's early. I couldn't even answer. My throat tightened as I wiped my paint-covered wrist on a rag that only made it worse. Footsteps. Steady, unhurried. My husband's kind of footsteps, the kind that always announced before entering. Go, I whisper, my voice barely sound. Out the back. Noah hesitated, frozen halfway between guilt and panic. Elena, please. He didn't argue after that, just nodded once and slipped toward the laundry room that led to the side yard. The back door creaked open, then shut again with a soft thud. By the time my husband walked in, I'd already grabbed a random dish towel, pretending to wipe the counter. He stepped into the kitchen, suitcase still in hand. You painted, he said flatly, scanning the walls. Yeah, needed a change. He looked around, eyes tracing the roller on the counter, the extra coffee cup, the open window. Someone helping you? The question landed sharp. I forced a light laugh. No, just me. Guess I got messy. He didn't respond right away. Just set his suitcase down and looked at me. That familiar mix of exhaustion and distance. Elena, he said after a long pause. I ran into Noah at the airport. My heart stuttered. What? He said he was heading this way. Said he was helping you paint. There was calm, almost too calm. The kind of tone that doesn't show anger, but hold it quietly like a knife hidden under a napkin. I asked him not to, I said quickly. He offered, I didn't, he cut in, voice level. You don't have to explain. I just didn't expect to see him there. He seemed nervous. He let that hang before walking over to the window. Through the glass, I could still see the faint outline of muddy footprints leading around the side of the house. He noticed too. Elena, he said, still looking outside. When did we start pretending everything's fine? I didn't know which way he meant, us, or me, or all of it. He finally turned, eyes softer now, but no less heavy. I'm not mad, he said, just tired of whatever this is. That sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. I opened my mouth and stopped. Words felt useless. The clock on the wall ticked louder and louder until it filled the room. Then, from outside, a sound. The crash of something metallic, like a ladder, tipping over. My husband turned sharply toward the window. And before I could think, before either of us could move, the side door creaked open again. Noah stood there, breathless, rain clinging to his shirt. His eyes darted between us. He started, but his voice cracked. The silence that followed was so deep, it almost swallowed the rain itself. For a moment, no one said anything. The rain outside softened, like it was holding its breath too. Noah stood in the doorway, water dripping from his hair, eyes flicking between me and my husband. There was no excuse that could fix the picture in front of him or in front of us. My husband set his jaw, voice low. You could have knocked. I dropped the ladder, Noah stammered. Didn't mean to. It's fine, I said quickly, stepping forward. It's not what it looks like. But the words sounded weak the second they left my mouth. What does something like this look like? A married woman with her husband's younger friend, paint on her wrist, silence thick enough to choke on. My husband's face didn't change much, just a tightening around the eyes. Elena, he said quietly, I asked you once if you were lonely. You said no. I wasn't lying, I whispered. Not then. He exhaled, slow and long, setting down the suitcase he still hadn't unpacked. I think we both stopped talking long before today. Noah took a small step back, guilt written all over him. Mr. Carter, I swear don't, my husband said, holding up a hand. You don't owe me anything. The tension wasn't loud. It was too controlled for that. But it hummed, alive in the room, in the small things. The rain tapping the window, the faint smell of paint, the echo of every word unsaid over the years. I finally spoke. Nothing happened, but something was going to. You can tell, can't you? My husband's silence was answer enough. He turned, walked to the table, and pulled out the photo that had been sitting there since morning. The one of him and Noah at that old barbecue. This feels like a long time ago, he said, almost to himself. Back when things were simple. Noah's voice cracked. I should go. I wanted to stop him, to say something that made it make sense. But maybe the truth was that it already did. He paused at the door, looked at me once. I never meant to make things worse, he said softly. You didn't, I said. You just reminded me what worse looks like. He left, quietly this time. The sound of the door closing felt final, but not cruel. My husband stood for a long moment, then said, maybe a little distance will do us both some good. Then he walked upstairs, suitcase in hand. When the room finally went still, I noticed the streak of green paint still on the counter. The same one Noah had left behind. I stared at it, tired but awake in a way I hadn't been in years. And then, just as I reached for the rag to wipe it away, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You forgot something in the garage. The message sat on my screen for a long time before I moved. You forgot something in the garage. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it, pretending I never saw it, letting the story end there. But that wasn't me anymore. Not after everything. I slipped on my shoes and went outside. The air was cool, still carrying that faint smell of rain. The garage door was half open, and the world inside felt suspended, quiet, dim, like time had taken a step back. Noah wasn't there. Just a small cardboard box sitting on the workbench. Inside were a few things, the extra paint roller, a half-used brush, and a folded piece of paper. My name was written across it, in handwriting I recognized from the labels on coffee cups. I unfolded it slowly. I didn't know what I was walking into. I just wanted to help. You made me feel like I mattered. Maybe too much. I'm sorry if I crossed any lines. I'm leaving town for a while. I hope you both find whatever it is you've been looking for. No signature. None needed. I stood there for a while, the letter trembling slightly in my hand. The quiet inside that space felt different now. Not empty, but honest. When I went back inside, the house was still. My husband's suitcase was gone from the hallway, his keys missing from the hook. On the kitchen counter, he'd left a note of his own, just a single sentence written on the back of a receipt. You were right. We both stopped living. No anger, no accusation. Just truth. For the first time in years, I didn't cry. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the sunlight stretch across the new green walls. The paint had dried unevenly in places, but somehow it suited the room. Imperfect, unfinished, alive. I made coffee, poured it into 1 cup instead of 2, and opened the window wide. Outside, the garden looked washed clean, like the rain had decided to forgive everything. Later that day, I packed up the leftover paint supplies and carried them to the garage. The box Noah left was still there, and for a second, I almost took it with me, but I didn't. Some things are better left as they are. When I turned off the light and stepped outside, the door swung slightly in the wind before settling shut. Not loudly, just enough to remind me it was still working. And as I walked back toward the house, I realized I wasn't waiting for another message or another visit. For once, the silence didn't feel empty. It just felt mine.